All right, looking at question 2 in your homework and getting into consumer surplus a little bit more. This is a tough question, but it's a good college level question. Makes you think, and you got to kind of know your stuff to get through it. And it's also building on a lot of concepts that we've learned and discussed in previous chapters. So if you start with the first here, it says, suppose that the supply of a good is perfectly elastic at a price of $5. So we're going to get to what that supply curve is in just a second. So remember, perfectly elastic, if we remember back, what will that supply curve look like? Remember, perfectly inelastic is vertical. So perfectly elastic is going to be horizontal. So the supply curve is going to be horizontal at a price of $5, meaning that at any price less than 5, the quantity supplied is going to drop to 0. So let's draw the demand curve first. It says the market demand curve for this good is linear, so we know it's going to be a straight line with zeroed quantity demanded at a price of 25. So if we come and we got our price and our quantity on our demand curve, we know that at a price of 25, quantity demand is going to be 0. So that's going to be the top of our demand curve. So we got that part. If we go further, it says given that the slope of the linear demand curve, so it's a straight line again, is negative 0.25. Remember, all demand curves are going to be negative. It's an inverse relationship. Law of demand says so, right? So it's going to be downward sloping. So how are we going to draw this demand curve with a slope of 0.25? Well, we know what 0.25 is as a fraction. Okay, this would be 25%, or 1 over 4. Okay, that would be a number that would be kind of easy to work with. So minus 1/4, or 1 over 4, is the same as minus 0.25. We should be able to kind of figure out a demand curve based on that information. So that means for every dollar that I drop in price, okay, price goes down by 1, 1 over 4, the quantity demanded is going to increase by 4. So for every dollar that I'm dropping, quantity demanded inversely is increasing by 4. That's minus 0.25 minus 1 over 4. So if I'm going to drop by $25, right, the end of my curve, okay, 1 over 4, 1 over 4, 1 over 4, if I do that 25 times 4, it's going to give me a quantity of 100. So if I draw that linear demand curve between those 2 points, that is going to be my demand curve for this problem. So we go back to it, and we drew a supply and demand graph. So now we're going to draw the supply curve. So that supply, right, perfectly elastic, which means the horizontal line at a price of 5. So if we come down here and at 5, we're going to draw our supply curve. Okay. Now it says this market, we should remember what equilibrium, so here's our equilibrium point. Okay, wonder what our quantity is. Well, we can figure that out, right? We drop by 1, we go over 4, okay, or we go up by 1, we come back by 4. So if we do that 5 times 4, quick math, that's 20. So this drop is going to be 20. So this quantity then has got to be 80, based on our slope, because it's linear, it's not changing. All right, so there we go. So at $25, when it's in equilibrium, at equilibrium price is going to be at $5. That's where quantity supplied and quantity demanded interact. What is, and I believe the question is asking, draw a supply and demand graph to illustrate the consumer surplus that occurs when the market is in equilibrium. So this area, right? Remember consumer surplus, the difference between what we are willing and what we have to pay, or what we did pay. So all of these units, and what is this for again? I can't remember the good. It just says a good. So whatever this good is, it doesn't matter. We paid $5 for every unit. The first individual was willing to pay just under $25. Okay, just under 25. The second, and then a little bit more in value, right? Only had to pay 5 and would have been willing to pay just about 25. So got just about $20 there of consumer surplus. So our consumer surplus is everything that's above price, which is 5, and below the demand curve, which is our marginal valuation. So our consumer surplus is this area that's above price, below the demand curve. So to figure that out, we got a difference between 5 and 25 is $20. And our quantity, okay, is 80. And because we're doing the area of a triangle, we take it by a half. So 1/2, you could do base times height, or base times height, however you want to look at it. So $20 times 80. All right. Get your math on that one. I'll let you guys figure that out. Right? That's how we do that problem. That's number 2. All right. Hope that helps. You're looking at the other ones here quick, and I'll kind of get Is there any more on consumer surplus? We should remember utility maximizing. This is kind of what we're getting into from yesterday, right? Allocating your budget between 2 goods. But here, 5, consumer surplus again. So the height of a demand curve at a given quantity reflects the marginal valuation, right? The marginal benefit of the last unit of the good consumed. So for a normal good, we're talking about when our increase in income, if it shifts the demand curve to the right, and therefore increases its height at any quantity, does this mean that the consumers get greater marginal utility from each unit of this good than they did before? Well, graph that out, see what you see. Let's just say that's a consumer's demand curve. All right? There's your demand curve. You could put a supply. Okay, there's equilibrium. Right. If we see an increase in income, that shifts the demand curve. Shifts the demand curve. What happens to our consumer surplus? Does it change? Do we get more? Do we get less? But you kind of map through that one, think that one through. All right, good luck.